Hey everyone, welcome back to Design, Create, Inspire with me, Bryn Young. Today we're continuing our ARE series, which we are officially on PPD, which is very exciting. If this is your first video with me, definitely go check out the other videos in my series. Or maybe you're just now starting with me and you've already taken all the other exams and now you're in PPD, so welcome. If you want to know more about me, you can go check out some of the other videos, but I like to kind of just get straight into it with these, especially with this one because there's going to be a lot of information. PPD is pretty big time, so I have kind of a lot I want to go over, maybe even diving a little deeper than I typically do, so I'll go into why I want to do that and my experience with this exam and all that good stuff. Before we do though, I'm very excited because I have an announcement on February 3rd, and you know what? I was gonna have it up before I even started this, but now I need to double check to confirm so that we're all good. Yeah, I'm sorry, February 5th. February 5th is next Saturday. If you're watching this live or when I first put it out, it's end of January. So next Saturday, February 5th, Elif and I are having a live to talk all about the AREs. Now, if you don't know who Elif is, then, and you're taking the AREs, you're probably living under a rock. Just kidding. But Elif is incredible. She is with the ARE questions website. It's, I believe, just, arequestions.com. And typically she's known in the ARE community as Leaf's Questions. So she has developed an incredible series of practice quizzes for the exams that are pretty much like sworn by. And so I'm excited to go live with her to talk all about her process, her experience going through the AREs, and then also a little bit about like her questions and what to expect and all that good stuff. I reached out to her because I see her name constantly on all of the forums and everything regarding the AREs, and I didn't use her resources when I was taking the exams. But I think that they are something that has helped so many different people. So I want to be able to, share her information, even though I didn't have firsthand experience with it. And so I want a way to, share it directly from the source, essentially. So mark your calendars. I didn't tell you a time. We are going to be doing it at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So she's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. So so mark your calendars. I'm also going to put the information down below so that you can put it in your calendar and remember. And then we'll also be mentioning it on Instagram and whatnot so that you can join us. If you join us live, you can come with some questions for her or I. And you can also just, see us chat and we'll go through comments and whatnot. So she may even offer some sort of discount code for her questions. So join us February 5th, 4 p.m/7 p.m. Depending on where you are. And we'll see you there. So to start off the PPD bulk, I want to kind of start this off by talking a little bit about testing anxiety and mindset. Now, I've talked about this concept quite a few times. If you've seen my ARE live that I did about fear setting, that's a really great one on mindset and how to kind of get over that hurdle of fear in the AREs and fear of failing. But I wanted to mention it quickly here because PPD can be a real struggle for people. I've heard some people, aren't passing on the first, second, third, fourth, 10th try, and it can be really deflating. It's one of the first, I mean, I think PA is one of the first real big design exams, but PPD is just a beast. And I think with it, when you can, if you start failing it, it can start creating a lot of test anxiety. So I'm going to make a whole other episode specifically regarding this, because I think the mental health of all of us during this exam process is really important. And it's something that is a lot deeper than what I want to go through in this, because I really want to spend the bulk of it talking about how to study for PPD. But I just wanted to mention it on here because so much of the passing portion of these exams comes down to mindset and really test anxiety. First of all, taking a test is not fun anyways. And now when it's such high stakes, maybe you've taken a lot, maybe your clock is counting down, and now you're taking on the beast of PPD, it can be overwhelming. So I just wanted to bring that up as a point that it's okay, knowing that sometimes you can go into these exams knowing all the information, you've got it, and you might not pass because of something like anxiety, so you don't finish the exam in time, or you're just overthinking it. And so I just wanted to give a couple, 4 real quick points to help you with this. Again, I'm gonna go dive deeper. If this is something that you are interested in, let me know in the comments so that, I know that it's worth taking the time to talk about it. But just 4 real quick points that can help you with testing anxiety that are really helpful. The first one's visualization. So this is something I always did. And again, I'm gonna do it real quick because I know you wanna get to the meat of the subject. But so with visualization, you wanna visualize yourself sitting down at the exam, taking the questions. What happens when a question comes up that you have no idea? What happens when you see pass on the screen? What happens if you see fail on the screen? And just really visualizing you there in it. An important part of this is you do actually want to visualize yourself in the worst case scenario. You would think like that normally isn't the case because you don't want to manifest a fail, but it actually helps you prepare. So if something like the worst case scenario shows up, you are aware and prepared for that. So visualization. Second one's breath work, really just focusing on deep breaths. This was something that I always practiced. I would go in before I would sit down at my exam table. Before I would even start, I would sit down, close my eyes, and take 3 super deep breaths and just relax. And, breath work is an incredible resource that can help a lot. 3 is movement. So we have a lot of energy and anxiety with these exams. So before you even go to the test center, doing some sort of movement, whether it's like jumping jacks, do some push-ups, even if it's like a fast yoga sequence or something like that, it helps expel some of that energy that can build up in our brains and in our muscles and everything like that. So even if it's like a light workout before you go, it actually really does help. And then the 4th thing I'm going to talk about is hypnotherapy. So I have done some hypnotherapy after I took the exams. I wasn't as into it during my exam process, but I probably would have definitely done it during it if I was more aware of it. But I have heard from many people who have maybe, had a hard time with this exam and haven't passed maybe like almost a dozen times and have found a really great resource in hypnotherapy. So it's definitely worth looking into. Again, I'm going to go a lot deeper into those and everything later, but I want to really get into PPD because it's a big one, and I hope that was helpful. Everyone's in a different place in these exams, but no matter where you come from, there's a lot of energy and stress that comes into this. So mindset and mental health is really important. Okay, next, let's do it. Okay, PPD. We are 2 away from the series being finished, which is exciting to finally get all this information out to you. PPD took me a minute to put together because it's intense and I have a lot to say. So let's just get into it. With PPD, it's bigger than what we've seen so far. So it's 100 questions rather than, I think PA was 75, if I remember correctly. So with PPD, we're really starting to put everything together in a form, in a building. We need to know not only like the site and programming that we did in PA, but now we need to know the systems that come into play. We need to know structural. This is where this exam starts putting into play the fact that architects aren't just architects. Architects are structural engineers. And I say this with a quote unquote, we're not. I know those professions are, we use them for a reason, but for these exams, we are required to have knowledge of structural engineer, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, electrical engineers, geotechnical surveyors, and interior designers, material scientists, acoustic designers, what else? There's so much, landscape designers. I mean, it goes on, and there's a reason for that because when you're a professional, you will be working with a lot of these different professions, and we need to be able to look at their plans and understand what's happening. We need to be able to plan for them, but it also at the same time makes this very intense exam. So I'm going to just take it section by section like I usually do. I'm going to give a little bit more tips and actually what is on, what to expect and what to study for those specific sections. Sometimes I do that at the end, but I'm going to do it per section just because it's a lot. So let's start with section 1. This one is only 10 to 16% of the overall exam, and that's environmental conditions and context. So that's going to be a lot of what we saw on PA, and that's why it's a little bit of a less percentage because we've already done the bulk of that in PA. But it's similar where we're really going to have to know site context. We're really going to have to understand how the environmental factors of the site affect what we're going to be designing. A lot of this will go into play like hillsides. If you're designing something on a hill and there's some sort of water feature, where is your building best positioned? It depends on orientation. It depends on where the wind's coming from. It depends on your local climate or the climate that they're saying the building is in. Because for example, if it's a temperate climate, that's going to affect what we want to happen in the winter time versus what's going to happen in the summertime. If it's a windy area, where on the hill we're going to want to position our buildings. So if there's streams that are running through that maybe hold wildlife, how we're dealing with that. So we want to make sure, again, we're always thinking of the health, safety, and welfare of the general public, the animals, the environment, and all that. So with that also comes sustainability. So understanding how we can design passive houses, how we can optimize existing conditions to build a really beautiful home. And then that also goes into slopes. So I mentioned hills because hillsides and slopes will really affect how we're designing, what the structure is going to be, what the drainage is going to look like, how we're going to get sewer and how we're going to slope sewer lines to our buildings. So it's not just due to wind or solar or anything like that, or I shouldn't say anything just like that. It also has to do with what we're having to cut and fill to create our pads and all that good stuff. So there will be likely slope calculations. So how do you calculate a slope? How do you read topography lines? So what is a concave slope versus convex slope? And really understanding what's being shown on a site plan. A site plan is really important in this exam. There's going to be a lot of information where you're looking at a site plan and you're having to read what's going on. Maybe you're having to locate curb cuts or different utilities based on what's shown on that site plan. So you really have to have a good understanding. Real quick, I'm going to interject and say, definitely go check out the blog post associated with this video, this time especially because I do give a lot of tips. I give little examples of like a slope calculation. I give some different chapters and stuff to go look at in the resources. So definitely look at the blog post associated to get some extra study materials. Site planning and design handbook is really good for this section. Chapter 10 especially is a good section to reference for that first section. So, you know, again, that's kind of the smaller portion of the exam. So, and also a lot that was carryover from PA. So not necessarily like new things you won't have seen before. Section 2 is also what we saw in PA, codes and regulations. That's going to be 16 to 22%. Now that's a bit bigger. And yes, we did go over a bit of that with PA, like ADA and the different IBC and zoning and all that good stuff. But now we're going to dive even deeper. We really need to now be seeing how these different codes and regulations are affecting the shapes of our building and what can be allowed. What a variance is, for example, and when can we use one, and understanding how these codes and regulations also protect us and the occupants from things like fire and earthquakes and other disasters. So fire and earthquakes are going to be a big one for this one. Fire is going to come up a lot in terms of even systems, like what type of systems are needed and where they would be located in a building or on a site. Even, you know, like fire access from fire trucks. That might be more on PDD, but it's still relevant. Definitely fire separation between occupancies is a huge one. How do you deal with fire in historical buildings? That's important. I would really understand how we have to deal with fire because it's a big one. So I'm going to dive into section 3, 4, and 5 a little bit more because we did codes and we did site for PA. So, you know, if you've done PA, you know the drill. So let's dive into section 3. This is building systems, materials, and assemblies, and this is 19 to 25%. So this is where it's starting to really get into the meat of what we're putting in our buildings, what the structure is going to look like, what type of HVAC system is needed. And one thing that is good to think about when studying is the exam is going to ask you questions in a way where you need to understand the system. So for example, if it's a HVAC system and you're asked to implement a system for something like a hospital, you have to understand like why one would be better than the other or why one might not even be allowed. For example, one like an air water where the air is being filtered throughout the space in the different rooms, similar to what we see in like a lot of residential. That would not be good in a hospital because it's going room for room. It could contaminate. So we in a hospital would have to design something where the air is coming 100% from outside into the spaces and there's no recirculation of air. So when you're studying and you're looking at the different HVAC systems, understanding what type of systems or how different type of systems act, but then understanding why you might do something different. The other thing to think about like this is rigid systems. So rigid systems like shear walls, moment frames, these are going to be really big on this exam. Not only like how do you, what's the moment around a certain point, but more so you have a client who wants to design a 3-story building, but they want as much glass around the perimeter as possible. What sort of rigid frame would be best for that, or what sort of lateral support is best for that? Well, we would have to understand that shear walls would not be good for that because that would not allow maximum glass. So understanding not just what a shear wall is or what a moment frame is, but understanding how that affects how we design. So that will really help you in your study process, but then how you answer the questions. And that also goes into why it's really important to understand the material, not just memorize it. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so yes, we need to understand like electrical systems and how things are placed into a building. The Architect Studio Companion is critical for this exam. Especially for this section, the Architect Studio Companion is really helpful. Pay attention to the diagrams that they have. They're super beneficial and good to help visualize what's going on. You're gonna need to know stuff like STC ratings and how that affects a space. What happens when you add a certain amount of material, or how much material do you need to add? Even like lighting calculations, you really have to have an understanding of acoustics and lighting and all that good stuff. So Architect Studio Companion is really helpful for that. I always recommend the ARE5 review manual from Vallis. It just has a really nice comprehensive look at that. Also, what really changed the game for me with PPD and PDD was Amber Book and Hyperfine. So I didn't use those for the other exams. I don't know, maybe I didn't know about it or they weren't around then. But especially Amber Book for the visualization of things is a game changer. It's 100% worth it. Go in with a group, you can get a discount. That's how I did it, I believe. But I highly, highly recommend it for visual. I don't recommend it as your only source though. People have said that. I don't believe that is a great way to go about it. I think you need to also look at the supplemental resources that are recommended to you through ARE or, looking at different practice quizzes and stuff. I also love designer hacks. I used them for everything, even my California exam, and I think it's great. So just a little quick notes. Let's see. Let's go on to section 4, project integration of program and systems. Now this is kind of the bulk of the exam, 32 to 38%. It's a decent amount. So this is what we're really like, everything's coming together. We're putting all the systems into one thing, and we need to understand what's happening. What's the building shape like? Where are things located? What type of systems are we using? What is the structure? What type of structure is the best one to use? What materials? This is really the meat of it. And I keep saying that, but this is, this is a big portion of the exam. One thing with calculations. So we can get really nervous about like, okay, are we gonna have to do a bunch of structural calcs? The thing with the structural calculations is they're typically fairly basic and they often provide you with the calculations. But here's the thing, you have to know how to use the calculations. You have to understand what the calculation is even like asking and understanding. Like sometimes it'll give you the calculation and the information, but you have to answer it in a way where you have to understand what it's even asking. And if you don't understand that, you won't be able to answer it. The other thing, pay attention to units. So this can really trip you up. This really tripped me up in quite a few things. Pay close attention to what they're asking you and then what the answers are. So if they give you, for example, a question that has something in like pounds per square foot, but then the answer is in pounds, you need to know that you need to convert it pounds per square foot to just pounds. So it goes back to like really simple arithmetic, trigonometry. There's some trigonometry, but basic arithmetic. So, to get pounds per square foot to just pounds, we have to multiply by square foot on both sides to cancel out that pounds per square foot, and then we get pounds. There's things like that that's like, this, but it can get confusing, and especially if you're doing a long equation and you just leave off like that pounds per square foot and you forget to convert it, you can get the wrong answer. So be careful with that. If you pay attention to that, you can easily do the calculations. You got it. So pay attention to that. It's hard, I'm sure, now with the whiteboard to make all the notes as easily. But if you can, when you're doing your calculations, always include the units in there so you don't forget. That's an easy thing that can make you make you fail that question. So definitely worth it. That also goes into, there's a lot of like conversions that they'll want, like cubic feet versus, square feet, even like cubic yards, miles to acres. Knowing some of those general conversions is really important. They may ask you something like you need to figure out the moment around a specific point, like if a building's under a certain loading condition. So the ARE handbook has an example of this, and I really do recommend going into the ARE handbook for looking at the calculation examples. Go through all those calculations in the handbook, even like the cost stuff. I'll talk about that when we go through cost, but go through all those calculations and do them and understand them. It's a really good way to learn it. And then also maybe have there's not going to be a ton of them. If there's one that the calculation just seems like so overwhelming, don't waste your time on it. Just skip it. Just answer whatever, answer, 15 and move on. Because if you take too much time in worrying about that, that's all the other questions that you might not get to or might not do well on because you focus too much on one. If they're all worth the same, it might be worth just knocking out. So I know that feels kind of weird to do, but I recommend that. Or even flagging it. Mark it, flag it, come back if you need to. I talked about this already, but do have a really good, clear understanding of moment and shear diagrams. Again, the Architect Studio Companion's critical on this. I think it's page 31, where they compare structural spans. That's really important. Understanding what type of material can span a certain distance, because again, if you're designing something and your client wants a big open space without columns in the middle. You need to understand what type of material you could use for that. So highly recommend Architect Studio Companion again. And fundamentals of building construction is also really helpful for understanding this. That fundamentals of building construction and building construction illustrated will be really important and critical for PDD, but also really helpful for PPD too. So I have more information in the blog post about calculating slope, like I mentioned. I also have some more information on like firewalls and all that good stuff. So let's go to section 5, last one, woohoo! Project costs and budgeting. So this is a small one. This is only 8 to 14%, but still have a good understanding of this because they're going to ask you questions. Things like material takeoff, things like the contractor has these 2 different options at these 2 different pricing. What would be better for you to recommend to the client? Now it's funny because I actually worked in estimating for a contractor for like 4 years, and this portion still tripped me up. So I recommend going through all the cost questions in the ARE handbook, not just for PPD, but like any one that they offer in the whole handbook, even if it's for like project management, because it will help you study for this. And don't forget the units. So if they're saying that there's this material that has a certain cost per yard, or like soil, it's a certain cost per square foot to export the soil, and then what's the cost savings, cost per cubic foot or whatever. So you need to make sure you are converting those units. If you convert those units, it's honestly probably not that hard to do any of those cost calculations. So just don't forget that. And then it's just going to be like understanding the certain types of cost analyses, I never know that word, that are done. For example, like cost per unit. When would you use a cost per unit, and at what project or point of the project? So like, again, if you're doing a hospital, what's the best sort of cost analysis that you would do? And how would that be different if maybe you're doing a cost analysis in schematic design versus like construction documents? So understanding those different ones. And again, like what would be good for budgeting, like materials and all that stuff. So that's a lot of information. Again, I don't want to go over like every single little thing. Otherwise, this is going to be an hour-long video. That's not fun. So go to the blog post, check out all my extra tips you need to know, all my little know your occupancy types, my little like checklist, my important things to remember, go through that. And then, I have my study tips, all those things. If you've been with me before, you know the drill, but definitely go download my ARE resource guide so you're not studying everything for this exam. You're only studying what you need to. Come hang out with Alif and I next Saturday so you can ask us questions and we can go over anything. And then before we go, I just want to give you 6 homework assignments for this. 6 things that you should do when you're studying. Maybe at the very end of your studying, maybe you have your test in a week and you want to just chill, you know the information, just do these 6 things just to refresh and know you'll be good to go. So number 1, where is the fire protection required? Or where is fire protection required? That's important. 2, where is fire barrier required? 3, I have this, if you don't have PPI, that's fine, but for number 3, and this is homework that I had given myself, but answer the questions on page 335 on PPI. This was my own homework that I gave myself. So And if you don't have PPI, they are still having a sale. Let's see, what's the date? For like 2 more days. At the end of January, I believe it's done, but they always have sales. So I have links, go check that out and get yourself PPI, it will help. Okay, number 4, name the chapters of the IBC, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 10. Name those chapters and know them, because they will likely give you a lot of these chapters, but if you can't like go exactly to where you need to go, what table in what chapter, if you're having to like flip through them to look for the information, you're not gonna have enough time. Time is really the essence in this exam. Okay, number 5, draw an optimal building on a hillside with some sort of water source nearby for each climate: cold, temperate, hot, arid, hot, humid. And then give each climate a geographical name, location, just like for reference. So like Maine, San Diego, Florida, I don't know, Montana. Like do that, and then draw the optimal building in that location, in that scenario. The optimal buildings, the orientation, the solar wind considerations, what sort of vegetation is important, all that good stuff. And 6, your last homework assignment is do the cost examples in the ARE handbook. So go through there, do those, and that should be helpful. Obviously, there's more to it than those 6 things, but those are just good 6 things that I kind of gave myself as a homework assignment when I was studying. So good luck, you've got this. If this is your first time taking PPD or your 10th time, relax. You know the information, you're gonna do great. You can always take it again, and then after this, you maybe only have just 1 exam left. Oh, I was gonna tell you too, real quick. I did my story of PPD. It's gonna be 2 seconds long. Go to my ARE whole original video if you want more on it. But I took PPD twice and failed and got so frustrated and over it and pissed off that I decided, okay, forget this. I'm not gonna wait 60 days to take it again. I'm gonna take PDD in 30 days, then I'm gonna take PPD 30 days after that. I took PDD, I failed. So I literally failed 3 in a row. I was so deflated and feeling like shit, honestly. And then I said, I don't care, I'm going back, I'm taking PPD. And on that 3rd time, I passed. So it was like, I took 1 a month or something like that for 3 or 4 months. And it was really overwhelming. It didn't feel good, but by taking it 1 a month, the information was super fresh in my mind. I was watching Amber books, which was super helpful. I was doing the hyperfine exam and I got through it. So I guess I say that because it might not be your last exam. Your second to last exam. It was my last exam. And also to say that I felt like PPD was a lot more difficult than PDD. PDD was hard too, but it's sometimes not looked at as one of the toughest exams, and I think it is, hands down. So maybe not for you, but just go in it, not for that to scare you, but just know that it's a lot and you will get through it. You just have to be, head down, get it done. Maybe you get mad enough where you just keep going like I did. So I promise you, light is at the end of the tunnel. You'll get there eventually, and then this will all be a distant memory. Good luck. Let me know if you need anything. I don't know, but hopefully this was valuable to you, and I will see you for PDD, and hopefully I'll see you guys with a leaf next week. Okay, have a good one. Bye.